1. For the past 2.5 years now, I've been living in the north of the Scottish Highlands. When I say north, I mean as far north as you can possibly go. I live in a small coastal town, which is actually the northernmost town on the British mainland. I had always wanted to live in the Scottish Highlands, which seemed a far cry from my gloomy hometown back in England. And when my dad and his partner told me they'd bought an old house up there, I jumped at the opportunity. From what they told me, this place sounded like the perfect destination. There were seals and otters in the town's river, dolphins and orcas in the sea, and at certain times of the year, you could see the northern lights in the night sky. But despite my initial excitement of finally getting to live in the Scottish Highlands, full of beautiful mountains, amazing wildlife, and vibrant culture, I was soon learned the region I had just moved to was far from the idyllic destination I had dreamed of. In my spare time, I took to exploring the coastline around the town's area. On one of these days, I started to explore what was east of the town. On the right-hand side of the mouth of the river, there's an old ruin of a castle. But past that leads to a cliff trail around the eastern coastline. 6 or so months later, and into the Christmas season, I had just got out of a long-distance relationship. Feeling as though I had finally found closure, I decided I wanted to go on a long hike by myself along the cliff trail. And so the day after Christmas, Boxing Day, I got my backpack together, packed a lunch for myself, and headed out at 6 a.m. The hike along the trail had taken me all day, and by the evening, I had walked so far that I actually discovered what I first thought was a ghost town. What I found was an abandoned port settlement, which had the creepiest-looking disperse of old stone houses, as well as what looked like the ruins of an ancient round tower. As it turned out, this was actually a heritage center, a tourist spot. It seemed I had walked so far around the rugged terrain that I was now 10 miles outside of my town. On the other side of this settlement were very high, distant cliffs, which, compared to the cliffs I had already trekked along, were far grander. Although I could feel my legs finally begin to give way and already anticipating a long journey back along the trail, I decided I was going to cross the bay and reach the cliffs, and then make my way back home. By the time I was making my way around the bay, it had become very dark. I had already walked past more than half of the bay, but the cliffs didn't feel any closer. It was at this point when I decided I really needed to turn around, as at night walking back along the cliff trail was going to be dangerous. And for the parts of the trail that led down to the base of the cliffs, I really couldn't afford for the tide to cut off my route. I made my way back through the abandoned settlement of the Heritage Center, and at night this place definitely felt more like a ghost town. Shining my phone flashlight in the windows of the old stone houses, I was expecting to see a face or something peer out at me. What surprisingly made these houses scarier at night were a handful of old fishing boats that had been left outside them. The wood they were made from looked very old, and the paint had mostly been weathered off. But what was more concerning was that in this abandoned ghost town of a settlement I wasn't alone. A van had pulled up, with 3 or 4 young men getting out. I wasn't sure what they were doing exactly, but they were burning things into a trash can. What it was they were burning, I don't know. But as I made my way out of the abandoned settlement, every time I looked back at the men by the van, at least one of them was watching me. Already feeling scared of the creepy surroundings, I now felt very unsafe because of these men staring suspiciously at me. I was paranoid that they were going to try and follow me, as if I had caught them doing something illegal. Thankfully, they stayed where they were, as I continued to make my way out of the ghost town and back along the trail. 2. Hi, here's a weird thing to explain. As a kid, I used to know these children nearby me who lived in a farm very far away. There were dozens of them, and they lived in extreme poverty. There were no words to describe the poverty they lived in. They had no shoes. The first time they saw a television was at my house. They worked at a local place for cents a day, and they wore the same clothes every day. They couldn't read or write. I remember they used to show up nearby the village I was in, even though they told me they lived very far away. Eventually, the locals got sick of these people and began to harass the children when they entered. However, I was friends with them for a long time. Most of our interactions were good, I was friends with 2 boys. I was pretty young but never tried to judge them. I remember people making fun of them for being very infantile despite being older than me by a few years at minimum. I remembered giving them a collection of cents I had, and they acted like I had saved their life. I knew they were very poor. I remembered them recently and asked my older brother if he remembers them too. And he told me something that genuinely made my stomach drop. He asked me if they're the ones who danced naked in the woods at night to no music. I was so confused. I asked him to elaborate, and he told me his girlfriend at the time caught them doing that and recorded it on her phone to show him. I remember distinctly that I was told that these people on that farm had stolen an aeroplane, and that they lived in it. I did not believe them, but I later learned the plane was recovered. I was really interested, so I googled where the plane was supposedly found. The address and what I saw genuinely haunts me. The farm where these children lived was a little scrapyard. It contained some very broken ruins of a farmhouse that was once on the property. I remember them telling child me that they did not believe in being documented, although at the time I didn't understand well. I think they may have been hinting that they believe in a commune lifestyle. They didn't believe in the government or last names. They had dozens of siblings, and there were many adults and children supposedly living on the property. But surely nobody could live somewhere like that. The woods that they danced in, according to my brother, is very strange. There are a few inlets, as it is by the sea and the main trail leads to there. My brother and his girlfriend were out there late at night for the purpose of sex, and walking along the trail, the old man who ran the pub was in the woods at night, in a uniform of some kind, or maybe a suit. He asked what they were up to, and my brother said they were going for a walk, feeling very guilty and embarrassed. He told my brother not to walk on the trail and to go another way, because it would disturb the bats in the trees which had diseases or something akin to that. These woods are massive and owned by a very rich family, who basically owned the entire village and rented to others. My brother was walking out for an hour into the woods with his girlfriend via phone flashlight, and he stumbled into a ditch where the ground had been replaced with sand of some kind, and there were, according to my brother, dolls nailed to trees. He told me they were gollywogs and other fabric dolls just nailed to the trees. They looked like they had sat there for decades. They ran out of the area, and the man who owned the pub was still there hours later, where he was before. It's interesting to note this village had a 100% white population. Anyway, after remembering and learning all of this, I decided to do some digging, and I found an article about the farm, which to me confirmed its existence. However, what made my stomach drop again was that this farm was listed as a fake address that did not exist. The article was about a human trafficking raid regarding children. The man in the article was listed as illiterate and unable to comprehend numbers. What's even weirder is that the locals in my village started saying these kids stole everything, including my brother, who admitted he just wanted a new bike and had the old one hidden. My mother's friend later confided in her that he started this rumor against these children to push them away, because he was a psychologist and did not like seeing them working a small job for cents, as it was child labor and exploitative. Eventually, nobody, including my friends who currently live in this village, ever saw these people again. My brother described them as being excommunicated. I just wanted to share my story because it's extremely strange and unnerving to remember what was going on with people I was friends with as a kid. There's so many weirder things as well that I was told or remember. 3. When I graduated college, I was about 24 years old. I really wanted to get out on my own and try living alone. Luckily for me, my grandma had asked to be moved into an assisted living center about a year prior. I had asked my parents if I could live there. They talked it over with my grandma, and she agreed it would be nice to have someone there after a year of it sitting empty. This was in kind of an up-and-coming area, but it still had its rough spots. I was so excited until I got there to do a walkthrough to see how I was going to set up my things. The house was a shotgun-style home with a cellar that could only be accessed from the outside. While I was walking through the house, I swore I was hearing noises. Finally realized they were coming from the basement. Called the police, and they came out and escorted out 6 people from the cellar. They were squatters that had been living there. After they left, I went down there to find all kinds of stuff. The cops took all the drugs and anything else illegal. It looked like someone had spray-painted the walls all over. It was just a concrete cellar where the water heater and HVAC was, so I wouldn't have really cared, except it seemed to be kind of satanic. I don't know anything about that stuff, but there was a couple of pentagrams and a chalk circle on the floor. Cops didn't really have anything to say about it. They didn't know either. I poured some water on the floor to wash away the circle, but the walls I just left as is. Fast forward a few months of me living there, I had forgotten all about it. I had started dating my future wife and she was over. We were getting ready for bed and in the bathroom brushing our teeth. A knock came from the back door. I ignored it, but it came again. It was 1 a.m. and this was my back door. Someone had to have come into my backyard by opening the fence gate. I grabbed my gun and went to the door, keeping it out of view. Some guy was standing on the porch. I opened the interior wooden door, but kept the outside storm door shut and locked. I asked what he was here for, since it was so late. All he said was, "Is Christina here?" I told him he had the wrong house, and he said, "Oh, so do you want me to leave?" I told him he better leave and not come back. He just stood there, staring at me. I was getting very nervous at this point and shut the door. He walked down the steps and just stood in my backyard, staring at the house. Then he tried to open the cellar doors. I had them padlocked, and he gave up. I opened the back window and told him to get out of here before the cops show up or he gets shot, or both. Again, he just stared, but then finally left. I didn't sleep that night. Again, a couple of months later, my girlfriend told me that the guy was back. Just standing in my backyard, staring at the house. This time it was in broad daylight. I called the cops this time. He tried the cellar doors again, but left before they showed up. The next day I went down to the cellar to see if there had been something left behind that he was trying to get, but found nothing. It was just a damp, disgusting cellar with a dirt floor. I have no idea why he wanted in there. I highly doubt the satanic stuff had anything to do with it. It just made this creepier. I unfortunately had to move out sometime later, as I could no longer afford it. Never saw the guy again. 4. My friend and I decided to go on a late-night drive to find this creepy cemetery one night. Great start to the story, I know. But we were bored, and in a small town with nothing else to do. After about 40 minutes of driving, we got to the state park. Now, typically, parks are closed after dark, but these roads were still public access, so they weren't off-limits to general drivers. However, we were the only car on the road at this point, and it was isolated, we thought. The lanes were surrounded by thick trees, and it was dark. No streetlight dark. We're on a narrow lane looking for this cemetery, but we drive by it unknowingly. The area we're driving through was kind of like a square of roads with only one way in and out. We get to the crossroads, where the road we are on goes straight through, or you can continue back through by a left turn only. Next to the ditch across the road from us, we see a dark green sedan pulled into the brush. No lights on, no people around. Not an accident from all we could tell. Whatever, kind of weird, but we slowly turned left and began to look back around, looking for the small rows of the old headstones again. As we get back around to the intersection about 5 minutes later, the green sedan is still pulled off in the bushes. But now, it's not the only vehicle there. There's a big pickup truck, right idling in the dark across from us, blocking the straightway. Now, it had to have come from the other direction since no other cars passed us or were in front of us or behind us. That was the way we had planned to go, to leave the park since we hadn't found what we were looking for, but we couldn't pass through. This truck was in the middle of the road, taking up all the space on either side. At first we were thinking, this guy's pal probably got his car stuck and called for help. Then this truck guy turns on his headlights, actually his high beams, and begins revving his engine hard. My friend and I exchange looks like I wonder who's overcompensating for something. And when we turn back, trying to see through the blinding light, we see the silhouette of a big, bulky man. He's standing in front of the truck, hands on his hips, just standing there. We aren't but a car length and a half away from this guy, but there's nowhere to go but left, which we know just leads us back around to the same place. We sit staring at each other for a few moments, trying to decide what to do. My friend starts pulling the car forward at a snail's pace, trying to keep as much distance between us and this truck as possible, and we make the left turn. He's just standing there, not moving, just looking in our direction. We weren't scared yet, really, but I'm a bit paranoid generally, so I was just waiting for him to lunge at the car, throw something at us or something. I don't know, it just felt really off. After we turn, I check the rear view and see the guy holding something as he takes a few steps behind our car in the outline of the light. It's long, barrel-shaped and threatening looking. We peel out of there now, wanting to put distance between us, but forgetting we're stuck in this square of bloody roads. When we get back to about the halfway point between the start of the straightway and the truck, whose headlights can we still see? We pull off to the side of the road, trying to figure out how to get out of this situation. I look out the window and see that we're sitting right next to the cemetery we had been looking for. But we're both too freaked out to get out now, and we laugh at the irony for a second. Then we see headlights coming from behind us. Oh crap, it's the guy, we think. As it gets closer, we see it's a white SUV, and it slows next to our car. The windows roll down, and it's a car full of guys our age. "What are you guys up to out here?" the driver says. We say just out for a drive, and they say some things we can't hear to each other. My friend and I don't have a strong, menacing aura, so we hoped we could just send some chill vibes and have them leave us off the hook for whatever was going on. Were they in with the truck guy? Because this wasn't the truck guy. But this was all just too weird. We asked if they'd seen a truck up ahead, where they had to have driven in. But they said that they hadn't. When we looked back, we noticed the lights from the oncoming section were gone. They laugh and pull away slowly, telling us to have a good night, and we pull back onto the road and take off for the exit, only looking out the windows long enough to notice that only the sedan was still there. "Sorry, buddy. Hope your car is all right." We made it back to his parents' place without further incident and told them about the encounter, but we couldn't explain what had happened, really. It still sounds kind of stupid when I say it out loud, but something was going on. Sure, it still could have just been a guy out fixing a car late at night, but why the aggressive behavior? And who were the people in the SUV, and why did they suddenly appear? Just glad nothing worse happened. I avoid state parks at night. But my friend, he's still a maniac, camping in the woods alone, and has seen some stuff. What a guy. The mad lad. Hey everybody, Hellfreezer here, and thank you very much for listening to this episode of Scary Stories. Wasn't sure what to name it for a second there because it's got 4 instead of the usual 3. But whatever we may call it, I hope you certainly enjoyed it. It occurred to me I hadn't done one of these for a while, so instead of scrimping and scraping trying to get a spinning plates or something done, I thought I should delve in and see what I can get. Not sure how many of these we'll have in the future, but I'll try and do them a little bit more often, and we'll see how many views they get, of course. As always, big thanks to everyone who allowed me to use their stories in this video. And if you would like to support the channel, you can do that by signing up for my Patreon page, linked in the description, as is my merchandise store on Teespring. Okay, no more bits and bobs today, so let's move on to Hellfreezer's question of the day. And today's question is... I've been watching the foreign language remakes of the show Ghosts. This is a British television show. There's been an American remake, there's now a German. a French one. There's a Greek and a Spanish on the way. They're working on an Australian one as well. So if you do watch media from a country that speaks a language other than your own, do you prefer to have it dubbed? Or do you like subtitles? Personally speaking, I much prefer the subtitles because although I don't understand what's being said, I do like to hear the emotion of the actress' performance. Let me know what you think in a comment below. And we'll skip the answer of the day today because I haven't done one of these for so long. I don't even know if there was questions of the day in the last one. So until next time, thank you very much for listening and take very good care of yourselves.